Well, it's a pleasure now to have Carl Bradbrook revisit us on the Comeback Coach podcast, because this is Carl's second appearance being featured as a guest. Now, you're looking obscenely fit and healthy there. What's the secret?
It's all in the mind, mate. And truly, it is all in the mind. So, yeah, it begins with the mind. It begins with the intention, and then it begins with the imagining, and then and then you just draw stuff in. And if your power is enough, if you up your power and you focus yourself enough, you're going to draw in the information, and then you got to take the action and bring it into your life. So for me, it was basically a diet change. And also some very deep, I've been working with some very deep state change, metaphorical, archetypal, like journeys that I take people on, and they really have a very, very deep effect. So it's like when you make a change at a very deep level in a person's psyche, it bubbles up and it filters through all the other layers. So all of the values and the beliefs and the behaviors and the patterns and everything gets disrupted in order to bring a new state into place. So that's part of the stuff that I've been doing recently that I wanted to briefly mention with you.
Get into it, because this is the topic that you live and breathe and eat and sleep,
yeah.
and it's what you're all about. And you've been doing some further advancement. And you've come up with some, like you said, now some of our listeners won't understand some of that terminology that you use,
Yeah.
for example, archetype and things like that. So in simple terms, what have you picked up that you're working with now that's really got you excited?
Okay. We talked, before we hit the record button, we talked about experience, and we talked about what's going on in the marketplace at the moment, with like just an avalanche of information out there and stuff being regurgitated. Somebody reads a book and then they just do a podcast, or they do a video or whatever online, and they regurgitate what they've read without actually having any experience of, or any deep experience of the materials. So I think what I want to share with you is there were two sides to Neville's teaching. First of all, there was like the imagination side, the law, and then on the other side was the promise. And what I've been experiencing recently has been more of a promise kind of a flavor, which has gifted me and drawn me to my attention to deeper change work. So I've had experiences where I've been meditating, and then the light just descends. Okay, so the white light, it just descends upon you, and there's just an absolute feeling of bliss encompasses your whole body. And unfortunately, it's fleeting. It'd be nice if you could sit in it for a few hours. I think some people do, but it's kind of fleeting and it comes down. But when it comes down, there's like an energy shift that takes place. So there's a lot of stuff going on the planet at the moment. And then recently this year, so things got very stuck over the last 3 years, like with the pandemic and everything that's going on. People experience a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulty. And from my intuition, like the God force drew itself back in order for the great reveal to happen, which is the apocalypse. And the Greek word for apocalypse is the great reveal. It's where everything is like shown as to what's going on, and everybody's becoming more aware of what's going on in the world. And then about 6 or 7 months ago, maybe more than that, maybe around March time, I started having experiences with like the Shekinah energy, which is the feminine side of the God force visiting me. And this is on top of having like the solar logos descend into my skull, summer solstice last year. And these are metaphors. So I spoke about metaphors and archetypes. So it's like the sun, the inner sun, like descending into your skull. And when these metaphors like get drawn into you, they create changes. Okay. So I started having like these like experiences. So I had the Shekinah energy came in as a very sad energy, but there was like a message there, and I was on a call with a friend, and like I channeled the Shekinah energy for a while, and he asked me questions, I answered the questions. Very, very strange to me, because I've never really had that happen before. And it's like, okay, there's a lot of changes going on, and there's going to be like a release of energy on the planet. We are going through the end of times. There's no question about it. This might not be what people are wanting to hear, in terms of, you know, new cars, big houses, all the rest of it, but we'll get to that in a minute, because imagination still works, right? But it's the alignment what we really need to pay attention to at the moment. So I had all this stuff come through, and there's going to be a release of energy and a lot of events going on. This year is going to be quite challenging for people. And the message I wanted to share with you, I said at the beginning, is about the higher self. So I had that come in, and then I had the Shekinah energy visit a few times, and it's like it's like your whole body gets enveloped with this energy. And you can feel it. It's like it comes out from the heart, or it comes down from above, and the whole body gets enveloped. And then there's like a connection to a higher level of consciousness. So one of the things that I got given was an archetypal journey, which I'm going to do a recording of, and I'll make it available to you to give to anybody who's on this podcast. And it was a connection to the new earth. So there is like an old earth, like an old matrix, and a new matrix, and the new is already there. And if you read the Gospel of Thomas, and if you dive into the Gospel of Thomas, it talks about like the end and the beginning. So we are at the end of the old creation and the beginning of the new creation. And we need to focus on this inner energy to lift us up above the dark matrix, the old matrix, into the newer matrix. As we focus on our higher self, which is our higher level of consciousness, we get lifted up to higher levels, and things become easier. It's almost like, you know, everything's cloudy, dark clouds down below, and you focus on your higher self, and it pulls you up, and you sort of poke your head above the clouds, and you can see the sunshine, you can see the sunlight, and things begin to change. So that's one of the things. And talking about experiences, I just wanted to share another one. So you know, what Neville talks about is very real. And I've had the experience recently as well. And again, this is with getting that higher self connection going. And it's where I've been sitting down in a meditation, and then the energy, it starts in the chest area, and then the higher self gives something to like focus on. So it's like a thought comes in. It doesn't come in from like our ego mind, our sort of memories and our past, which gets dragged in. It comes in from the higher self, like in the present, and it's kind of like, hey, focus on this. So you focus on it, and then the energy just begins to expand and expand, and it's like this absolute bliss and ecstasy. And then it just like sort of goes up the chakras, and it goes up, and you're focusing on and visualizing this thing. And this takes place in a few seconds, like maybe 30 seconds, and it comes up to the top. And then the experience that I've had is like there's a voice, and Neville talks about the auditory vision. So when an auditory vision happens, it's the presence of David. So a voice comes in, it goes, "It is done. You will experience X, Y, Z." So I wanted to share that to say, you know, what Neville teaches is very real. You know, these very fast meditations are very real. But what I really want to share with people is that there's a commitment, a dedication, a persistence to doing this work that really triggers all of this stuff so that you can experience it yourself. It's not like, okay, I'm going to watch one video, it's 3 seconds, I don't have to do any work at all, I'm just going to do a 3-second meditation, and boom, you know, I'm going to win a lottery or something like that. It's like you've really got to dedicate yourself to this journey, and sit your ass down in a chair and do the meditations, do the visualizations on a daily basis, and hopefully in alignment with your higher self, as opposed to in alignment with ego and societal programming and a lot of stuff which is around on YouTube and Facebook and other social media and TikTok and all that other stuff that's out there at the moment to distract people. So if you can focus on the higher self, get that happening, get that inner guidance, and do the work, this stuff really does work, Mike. You know, that's the message I really want to share with people. There's been a shift, all right, and the God force is present here like it hasn't been present in the past. You know, we know the story of Neville. God came down to earth to become man so it could experience itself as man, so that man can then experience itself as God, right? So there was a forgetting, and this is talked about in different philosophies. So they cross the planes of which is the plane of forgetting. God becomes man, and then there's a process of waking up. And God really does, you know, separate it. It did separate itself entirely from this creation. But now what we're experiencing is like the God force is back in a big way, and it's energizing this creation in a big way because it has completely gone off in a wrong direction. It's like the pendulum has swung from the light to the dark, right? So dark over on that side, over to the light, and it swung way, way, way over to the dark. You only have to flick the news on and see what's happening in the world. And now the God force has come back. It's shining its light. There's a lot of light beings here on planet Earth. There's a lot of action going on the light side of things at the moment on planet Earth to lift us out of this chaos. And what we can do personally is like make a decision, align to our higher selves, and really get that inner connection happening. And when I do this with coaching clients, or I do it with friends, I do it with anybody, as soon as they align to the higher self, there's like a shift in consciousness, right? It's like from an outward focus, looking around here, who's going to save me? Who's going to help me? How's it all going to work out? To like looking in here, closing the eyes, looking in here, and there's just like an instant connection. And that connection is there like it hasn't been there before in the past. It's really, really present for people to turn to it. And when you turn to it, you get that connection, and things start moving, things start happening. So look, I've probably used my 10 minutes up.
Well, what I've heard there, Carl, and thank you for that. What we've heard is you've given us some insight into what I see as lots of different doors that are closed, and if we open them, we go down corridors, because there's a lot of information there that you've given us across quite a number of different topics, although it's all in the one topic. But what I'm thinking of, first of all, here,
yep.
And I'll just make this statement, Carl, because then I've got some more questions for you.
Okay, yep.
There'll be some people listening to this podcast and viewing you on YouTube, and they'll be thinking, what the hell is this guy on about?
Right.
Then there'll be people who are very advanced in a spiritual journey of some kind, and they'll go, oh my God, I'm right with Carl. I totally get what he's talking about. And then there'll be people in the middle of it that are on and off and unsure and not. I just want to make the comment, and then a question. Who is this information for? Forget the contents. If we put all the contents into a big present and wrap it, who are you giving it to? What's the avatar of the person for this?
That's a really good question. Okay, this is anyone who's on the spiritual journey, who's being drawn. They're looking, and they may be looking at the stuff that's available out there at the moment, and it's just not doing it for them. They're not getting that like emotional heart connection going, because the heart is really what we need to activate. The heart is the doorway to the higher levels of consciousness, right? So there's people out there at the moment, and they're clicking from one channel to another channel. I've got a couple.
Just let me pause you there. Excuse me for interrupting. Just let me pause you. This is an important point. Yeah. When you say the heart, and you literally put your hand on your chest in the region of the organ we know, the muscle we know as the physical heart, is that the heart you're literally talking about? Are you talking about something else?
There's a heart chakra. There's like a portal in this area, right? So the heart chakra is like so we've got the base chakra, the sex chakra, we've got the what's it called, the sacral chakra, then we've got the heart chakra, throat chakra, third eye chakra, crown chakra, and then there's one a few feet above the top of the head, which I believe is where the higher self is located at, which is essentially us, but it's at a higher level of consciousness. So,
and what is a chakra, Carl?
The chakra is an energy center. So it's a portal where we get our energy from. So this body is a projection, right? So that's a whole different journey as well. So the higher self is projecting. So the higher self is, and the mind is the projector and the screen. Okay, so and the energy centers are how we get energy in to run this system here that we're experiencing.
Neville Goddard says that we're all God and having the experience of a lifetime, and that the energy, the God, is within us, as do the Gospels teach that. You quote the Gospels, so you're quoting from the Bible and you're quoting from the Christian Bible, I gather. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how much of what you're talking about, what you now believe, what you now teach, not now believe as in you didn't believe it before, but where you're at now, what we're talking about, Carl, now, and you've brought it up, but you're quoting the Gospels, quoting from the Christian Bible. How much of your work is religion? And that's a loose terminology. So there's religion, there's philosophy, or there's theology, there's philosophy, there's metaphysics. Where are you at with where are you standing? Or have you got a foot in all camps?
No, where I stand is with experience, right? God is experienced. Like, you can't teach someone about God. They have to experience it. You can open the door. I had a friend of mine, he's passed now. He's a Muslim guy. And we were talking one day about the Muslim faith. And he said there's 5 basic steps that the person needs to take. And I'll just quote the first one because it's the key. And he said, number 1, open the door to God. And if you go to the Christian religion and, people are in church and all the rest of it, they have a process there. Some churches have a process, and it's called the altar call. So people go there, they turn up for meetings, and they listen, and they listen, and they listen. And at one point, the guy at the front goes, like, would anyone like to give their life to Jesus? And, certain people get up and they go and do the altar call, and they hand their life over to God.
Been there, done that, yes.
Okay, so then we've got AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Drug Addicts Anonymous, etc. It just goes on and on. The first step: hand your life as you understand it over to a God of your understanding. All right. So same story again. And for me personally, what I've been guided to is the higher self. It's our higher levels of consciousness. Yeah. It is our God self. And most people are running around in ego, which is the past. The ego is simply a bunch of programming which keeps getting regurgitated into the present. So when I say to people, open your mind to your higher self, it's like, get into the now and literally make a covenant with your higher self, like speak to the higher self that you have, which is you. And when people initially start speaking, they're going to be talking from a perspective of ego, which is sort of over here, and the higher self is in the center. But when they turn to it and then they put their attention on it, and they make this like set of intentions as to how they want to experience their relationship with their higher self, they begin pulling their self back to the center. And eventually they get back to the center and they realize, oh, I am my higher self. And instead of living in the programs, living from the programs, they're living as a little child, which is how all kids are when they're born, unless they've had a pretty traumatic like childhood. They're living as their higher self, operating the programs, as opposed to being in the programs trying to make stuff happen in the world by force. And it's very, very difficult, which most people know. Yeah.
Yes, and you've got a website, carlbradbrook.com, and for our viewers and listeners, that's in the show notes. And if you'd like to know more about what Carl teaches, what his experiences are, I encourage you to click on that link and explore Carl's many links on the website. I've invested in a number of Carl's previous courses, and
thank you, Mike.
and the value that Carl puts into his content is just mind-blowing. So if you're on a spirit, if what you've heard Carl talk about, if you get that feeling inside, it won't be a logic, rational thought. It'll be a feeling that I often describe as something that tingles behind your belly button. If you get that'll be something moving you to do something else towards where you're meant to be going. And maybe that's clicking on Carl's website and having a look. Carl, I want to mention something else here that you mentioned earlier on in our conversation, and it links to what you mentioned there about AA and giving the higher power, as the 12 steps programs refer to it. Now, what came to mind when you were speaking earlier, you mentioned about the light, the shining light, and it didn't last long. It was, I gather it was seconds, not minutes or hours for you, right?
Seconds, yeah.
Yeah. And what came to my mind as you were talking about that is it's more often the way it is with a sudden epiphany and enlightenment, that it's fleeting, but it's profound. And Bill Wilson, who is one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, had such a spiritual experience. I'm not saying the same as yours, because everyone experiences it differently, but that's what came to mind. And I've read and also spoken to others who have had such experiences. And it doesn't, you wished it could last minutes, hours, days, weeks, or a lifetime, but it's fleeting. But the effect it has lasts way beyond the day you're in, as your proof.
It's eternal. It's like a connection. It's like the higher levels of the God force, like the most core of the God force reaches out and it goes ding and makes a connection. And like all of a sudden you go, ooh, that was good. And boom, you're connected. And that is what is going on at the moment in a bigger scale on the planet. And then that is also when you turn towards your higher self and you really open yourself with all your heart, all your honesty to that connection is happening more now than it's ever happened in the past, because the core level of the God force has said enough. This experiment has run to the highest levels of depravity in this dimension, in this world. It's gone as far as I'm prepared to let it go. And now it's time to bring everything back to one again, because we're all one. There's one God, and we're all facets, we're all aspects of that God force having our own individual experience. So we are the Elohim, we are the children of God within God. Right, so we are God within God.
How does what you're talking about help somebody who's not ready to take that full deep immersion step into what you're talking about and teaching, but they do want to use it kind of like, and it sounds a bit obscene, but I've seen it referred to as using God like a catalogue and flipping the pages, and I'll have this thanks God, and I'll have that thanks God, or I'll have this thanks higher consciousness, I'll have the car, I'll have the house. Do you teach that as well, how to use affirmations?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, everything is available to everyone, right? And this is a very, very, very key point. Look, affirmations are pretty weak. So if people are doing affirmations standing in front of a mirror, yeah, it's good. You can do mirror work, stuff like that. But really, you want something deeper, because if you're not going deep, if you're not really facing your shadow self and embracing your shadow self, bringing it into the light, taking a really, really long, hard, deep look within.
Now, I better stop you, Carl, because there's another terminology. Pardon me for jumping in, but you better just explain. What do you mean in layman's terms, shadow self? What does that mean?
The shadow self is aspects of the self which have been separated from the self by some kind of a traumatic event. So it could be people abused at childhood. It could be alcoholism, drug addicts. It could be just people who've been mentally abused at work, physical problems, all sorts of stuff. And then it kind of creates like a splitting off of the psyche, where a part of the psyche like splits off and it becomes a shadow, an energized shadow in the consciousness of the individual, which can drive the behavior of the individual in a certain direction. So if people, and there's also a karmic aspect beyond the karma that, karma essentially, you and I sitting here, we're living our karma, right? That's it. We are currently experiencing our karma, good or bad. And then there's other influences, but so that stuff can get split off at an earlier level. If you really want change, you've got to address that stuff. And some of the work that I've been working with recently addresses it real fast, because it's working with a deeper set of tools than I previously had access to when I was doing my work initially. So there's tools that can help a person face that and deal with it. And then there's the imagination side. So really it's aligned to the higher self. Once you're aligned, game of life. What's life all about? How do I play this game? I've got to know how I play the game. 3, vision. What do I want? Now, if it's an ego perspective that's not aligned with the higher self, it's going to be really difficult for people to manifest, because they're trying to manifest something which doesn't have an inner alignment, right? And the higher self is the king. Okay, so this is why people have a lot of problems. They're trying to manifest stuff which the higher self is saying, go over here, and the ego is saying, go over there. And they're like bashing their head against a brick wall trying to manifest something which is just not in alignment at that point in time. The higher self is saying, go here, fix this, sort this out, get alignment here, then we'll take you back over there, we'll mosey in, pick up a nice relationship, a car, a job, a career, which is really in line with where you're going. So life vision in alignment with the higher self. Number 4, energize that vision. How do we do that? Imagination, imagination, imagination. And I've had this, I talk to people, how do you imagine? Describe to me what you do. And they're like, well, I sit there for 3 minutes and then it's done. And they've seen this on YouTube videos. No, sit there again and again and again, minute after minute, hour after hour, until you really in your heart feel like you got it, or maybe even day after day until you feel it in your heart you've got it, or for a month or 2 months or 3 months. This is the work that the ego doesn't want to do, right? And then what's going to happen, because you're energizing the new present, which is like a possible future, which can be yours in alignment with your higher self, and you're trying to give it enough energy and pull it into the now, right? Ideally, if you give it enough energy, what happens is it goes, and it's, woo, all of a sudden it's there, which happens. And the past is going, no, 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 I want you, live in your past, right? So then we've got the tools, which is revision and clearing, to like, boom, get rid of that past stuff which is holding people back. And so it's a simple 5 steps. Align to your higher self. That's the stuff that most people don't do, right? Game of life. Well, they know it a little bit, but do they know enough about the game of life? Because number 1 would be aligned to your higher self, your God self. Because without that aspect of ourselves, we're wandering around in the dark without a flashlight. Number 3, aligned life vision, highest life path, ideally highest life path. So can we get aligned to our highest life path? Yes, we can, right? Number 4, because it's an aligned highest life path, it's going to be much easier to manifest. And we're going to get much more clues from our higher self as to what to focus on to manifest it. So number 4 is energize, imagine, 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 imagine. Neville said, pearl of great price. Like, there's the pearl, right? I've got it on my notice board. Okay. So sell everything, buy the pearl. So like Christ is imagination, and imagining is Christ in action. So everything that is happening now on this planet in every dimension is being imagined. So we've got to master this imagining thing.
And what's the 5th there, Carl?
Is going to come up. Whatever shit people have going on in their life, in their mind, their shadow self, the stuff they're trying to hide, the stuff they're trying to drink over, eat over, sex over, whatever, cover up, work over, anger, all the patterns, behaviors, all the nastiness of humanity, which we all have some in us that we need to get rid of, right? Whatever that stuff is, we got to face it, and we need a set of tools to do it. Right. And when you've got a set of tools to do it, it becomes easy. The journey becomes easy. I've got a course called Abundance Life Vision, and that course helps people align to their higher selves, get a life vision, game of life, what's going on, get a life vision, energize the life vision, and start bringing it into reality. And there's bits and pieces of clearing in there too. Okay, then there's another course that I did called the SIMS, the Simple Imagine Manifest System, which goes deeper into imagining. So helps people to practice their imagining, and also some deeper level clearing stuff. Then I've got something called the Higher Self Evolution. And what I suggest at the moment is people do the first module, which is essentially defining their relationship that they want with their higher self, and then a process to integrate it. And on top of that, what I want to do is I want to offer people, anyone who takes up on this offer, a half an hour personal call with me, and I'll help them understand where they're at and what they need to do to move forwards in the most powerful way, which is going to help them in the most powerful way. Right. And this is for anyone on Mike's podcast. Normally, all of that would be $568. And basically, if they buy the Abundance Life Vision, I will add everything else in and contact them with details for a session. So it's literally just buy the Abundance Life Vision. Everything else I will add into their members area, and I will contact them for a talk.
That's a very generous offer. And for the listener, for the viewer, to find out more about what Carl's offering there, carlbradbrook.com, carlbradbrook.com, and the link is in the show notes. Carl, once again, thank you very much. Time always flies when you're having fun. But until next time, this is Mike Searles from the Comeback Coach podcast, signing off.
Yeah, and thanks to you, Mike, and thanks to everybody for listening in. And I really, in my heart, pray that people got something out of this that they can action. Whether it's with me or with someone else, just go for it. Yeah.